Okay. It is July 27th. Welcome to the second episode of the Delay of Game NBA podcast. This episode we'll be talking about predictions for the upcoming Orlando bubble games and off postseason. We'll be talking about a little bit about the scrimmages and just what we think will happen and who might be crowned champion by September. And yeah, so that's the agenda.
Yeah, sounds good.
Let's start with some reactions to the scrimmages so far. What do you think?
Sure, yeah. Looking at the scrimmages that have currently occurred, it's the way the NBA has gone through is actually quite decent. And also, I would say the way in which they've managed crowd noise is something that I think every fan should be analyzing. If you look at the way they're doing crowd noise now, they have like sort of the sounds from 2K or like that kind of animation that plays out through the arena. And especially now without any fans in the arena, you can definitely hear a lot more of like the play calling, the coaches, and like the teammates of their encouragement off the sidelines. That's something that's going to be really important, especially heading into the playoffs, where the crowd factor usually plays a big part, especially when home games and away games. And now that I would say home court advantage is no longer a thing. So that's something that like higher seeded teams, they have to pay attention to.
Right. And I remember there was a clip where Carmelo Anthony he says that get the fuck out of here whenever he gets those rebounds, right? And you can just hear it loud and clear.
Yeah, you can just hear it loud and clear in the audio. Yeah.
Right. What are your thoughts about Ben Simmons shooting threes?
It's long overdue. Yeah. What I will say about the Sixers is that really it's really hard to have a point guard, or now he's power forward, but before as a point guard who wouldn't be shooting threes, and then you would have Embiid down the block. And so what was he tried to move Embiid out to the three and tell Embiid, hey, you got to hit these threes. But really, like Embiid, you want him down the block. Like that's where he does his best, and that's where he's rebounding, right? If you place a big man out on the three, you're basically like Embiid for some of the season was just relegated to be basically like a 3-and-D guy, And that's like with somebody with Embiid's like natural talents, like that's not how you want to be using him. So I'm really glad that like Simmons has come around to seeing that like he needs to hit the three if that team is going to ever win a championship. He needs to be able to hit threes consistently. Yeah.
Right. And it's really more than that too. Like everybody on the Sixers has got to do better. Like Al Horford came into the league, came into Sixers with large expectations. He can take on Embiid's minutes. He can play the power forward position. They can go jumbo big lineup, and it just hasn't worked out. And he's had a really disappointing season, especially in his regression defensively. Like that's the only thing that makes him sort of unique is that he can, he can guard like 2 to 5 or 3 to 5 or something like that, right? And this year he's just been a little slow on his feet, and he's not much better of the perimeter defender than Joel Embiid. So that's definitely something he's got to keep in mind and maybe work on.
And that's definitely something like very concerning, especially given his age and the contract that the Sixers gave him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
because that's a long-term deal.
Yeah, that's a ginormous contract. Let's move on to prediction then.
Sure, yeah.
So we got 9 teams from the East and 12 teams from the West, or 13. 13 teams from the West.
Oh yeah, sorry, 13. Yeah.
Right. 22 teams in total. Do you know how like the 8th seed works? In
right, yeah.
8th and 9th seed works.
Yeah, it's like if they're within, I think it's 4 games back or 3 games back. Is it 4?
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah,
and then they do.
I'm pretty sure it's 4 games back. Yeah, there's a play-in tournament where you play twice, and if the 8th seed wins that any game, one of the 2 games, then the 9th seed's knocked out. But the 9th seed wins 2 in a row, then they take the 8th seed spot.
Right. So let's just take a look at let's look at the East first. So currently 8th seed Magic, they're half a game behind the Nets. So it's really just Nets, Magic, and Wizards who have a chance of falling out. Sixers are safe, Pacers are safe, everybody above is safe. So it's Nets, Magic's, Wizards.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of the 8 games that you have, the rest of the season they have to play. Who do you think? What do you think it's going to look like? And keep in mind, Wizards are 6 games, 5.5 games behind, or 6.5 games behind.
I expect that the Magic are likely to make the 8th seed, or likely just stay the 8th seed, and Wizards are most likely going to fall out. I don't see any compelling reason to see why the Wizards would be able to climb back out of that hole. And also, regarding the Nets, I actually expect the Nets' performance to definitely drop off. Like, a lot of their players are not even in the bubble, right? Like Kyrie, Kevin Durant, and I think Spencer Dinwiddie as well. Like, some of their players, they just aren't playing. So that's just lost personnel that you're not going to have on the court.
Right. Yeah, I think it's definitely think Wizards probably aren't going to make it. I do think that the Magic are going to move up.
That's what. Yeah,
seed, and that's really important, right? I feel like that's really important because there's a huge difference between facing the Bucks and facing the Raptors.
Right.
In the playoffs, like you're facing the Bucks, it's pretty close to 0% chance of winning. And even though I am a little bit of a Raptors fan because Canadian, right? But the Raptors, making it past the first, second, third round, like it's not guaranteed. We know the Raptors have done the best job at creating a roster, creating a system that works in the regular season, but without that shot maker, without the Kawhi Leonard, without the late game clutch player, how are they gonna find, or who among the roster is gonna find their shot and find their moments in late game, right? That's gonna be the real problem here. And I think if obviously it's gonna be a lot easier if you're facing the Nets with their best player now is Karis LeVert. But like I think Magic, it's really important for the Magic to get that 7th spot. Right. So
at this point, if you're in the 8th seed, it's a first round exit quickly.
Yeah.
4 or 5 games max. 5 games max.
Exactly. Let's move on to the Western Conference. Now this is a lot more interesting, right?
Exactly.
I think Mavericks are. Sorry. I think Mavericks are safe. They're I think 7 games ahead or 8 games ahead.
Yeah, they're quite a few. Yeah,
they're quite a few games ahead. They would have to lose all their games to drop to the 8th seed, and Grizzlies will have to win all of theirs. Trailblazers. So you have Grizzlies 8, Trailblazers 9 at 3.5 games behind.
Yeah, 3.5 games behind.
Pelicans behind that at a single game behind, or no, half a game behind. Kings behind that. They're actually tied in record, Kings and Pelicans, and the Spurs and Suns behind that, with another game or 2 behind, game 2 back. So 8th seed. Who do you see becoming the 8th seed at the end of the 8 games?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really interesting playoff dynamic. I really do think though that even with there's been a lot of hype talking about Zion. He's going to take the Pelicans back to the playoffs. While that is possible, I think it's more than likely now that the Grizzlies are going to stay in the 8th seed. It's going to get really competitive, especially with Trailblazers, Kings, Pelicans. They're all vying for that 8th spot. But I don't really see, in my opinion, the Pelicans being able to clinch that, especially since, I know that the Pelicans, their schedule is known to be one of the easier. It's going to be the easiest ones in the bubble. When I look at the Grizzlies roster construction, I just personally think that, especially with like Ja Morant's like standout play, and he's been doing quite well, that this shouldn't really be an issue. I think that should Zion really get in stride, and we really start to see him like going crazy on the stat board and like helping out the Pelicans with their win-loss column. If they're on a roll, then that's when we can start really having a discussion of whether the Pelicans can pick up that 8th seed, because it's definitely possible. It's definitely in a range of possibility. But right now, currently looking at the way the games are playing out, and the Grizzlies are sitting fine as they are. They should be keeping a healthy amount of paranoia on their back, though. They have a lot of teams breathing down their necks.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I think the 8th and 9th seed is gonna stay the same. I think the Trailblazers are gonna be red hot. I don't think anybody's gonna stop Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. Those are the two, they got the two deepest bags in the league. They're really gonna, torch the defenses of the other teams. And looking down, you got the Kings, who've, recently have been okay. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. That was before quarantine. So it's really going to come into question, the kind of leadership they have, because they're also a young team, right? And you've got your vets is basically Harrison Barnes. I think he's only 30 years old. And then you have the Spurs, who unfortunately lost LaMarcus Aldridge before a month before, and now your bigs are very thin. They were already very thin before, so thin that you had to play LaMarcus Aldridge as center, even though he's usually a power forward.
Yeah.
So you're playing Drew Eubanks minutes. You got Jakob Poeltl. I just don't see them making
not
any
really good
progress at all.
Yeah.
And the Suns are.
I mean,
that's a really deep hole. They've dug themselves. But what we forgot to mention is in the East you have because the 8th seed might be the Nets, because the Nets, I don't think they're going to win many games in the 8
bubble
games, right? So if the Nets end up the 8th seed, and the Wizards manage to win enough games to get it within 4 games back.
Yes, also we'll actually see the play-in being used.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's very possible we might see the Wizards in the playoffs over the Nets.
Right. Yeah, especially if the Wizards have to win 2 games against the Nets and the Nets are undermanaged. The Wizards still have Bradley Beal, who's producing like crazy.
Yeah, and they have Rui Hachimura, who's looked good in these scrimmages, right? He was against Kawhi the other day, and Kawhi, his defense was always the same. He played solid defense, but Rui Hachimura is just rising up, hitting those shots. Reminds me a lot of Carmelo Anthony and his kind of gameplay, right? Those mid-range jumpers, just unstoppable. If you can't block them, you can't stop them, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a little bit. So here's where we're sitting at. I think the East, the 8th seed will become the Wizards. I think they're gonna get enough games to get into that play-in. So what we have here is first seed Bucks. Second, let's just assume everything stays the same. Because a couple changes, we can't really predict that in the 8 games. We have no idea who's going to be winning. I can just guarantee you that the Bucks will be first. I think they clinched the spot already. Yeah. So first seed Bucks, second seed Raptors, third seed Celtics, fourth Heat, fifth Pacers, sixth 76ers, seventh Magic, and 8 Wizards. So that's our prediction. Okay.
Yeah.
Now looking at the playoff matchups. Bucks easy win. I think Raptors are going to sweep them. Magic might be able to, take a game away, but I think they're going to overall win the series. Yeah.
So Bucks in 4 or 5.
Yeah. Celtics possibly versus playing the 76ers. Or the Heat or the Pacers, whichever one gets to loses the most games. But let's assume the Sixers right now. That's another interesting series because we've seen it so many times.
Yeah, we've seen it's basically a rivalry at this point.
Well, it's a little bit of a one-sided rivalry, right?
Right, exactly.
The Celtics have been
able to haven't shown.
Yeah, Brad Stevens has been able to outsmart Brett Brown every single time. And they just hammer down and penalize 76ers with their weaknesses on the out perimeter. They've just been doing a very good job of taking care of weaknesses from Ben Simmons, his inability to shoot, Joel Embiid, who settles for mid-range jumpers instead of hammering down on the inside, which is what he's supposed to do. And that's going to be a very interesting series, but I think the Celtics get away with that one.
Yeah. In Brett Brown's coaching, I really don't see his ability to adjust that often. The 76ers usually have a specific game plan, and if that game plan doesn't go right, it's usually a loss. But if you look at other teams like Celtics or like the Raptors that are like more top seeded, the reason why they're up there is because their coaches like Nick Nurse and Brad Stevens, they're able to adjust on the fly. That's something that especially in the NBA and playoff basketball, you really need. Teams are gonna like throw the playbook at you, and you're gonna have to be able to adjust. Right.
Exactly. And especially in a 7-game series, right? Like you know, it might work game 1, game 2, like the Bucks versus Raptors last year. But if you can't change up your play, if you can't change up your system, and make it work out, it's going to be really problematic for you.
Right. Well, that's a similar concern with the Bucks, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because well, with the Bucks, the thing is that their playbook is going to be the same every game. Like the main playbook in which they approach their offense and defense, it's pretty well known to every team how they're going to do it. So,
exactly.
Yeah, the real question in the Bucks is that play going to be strong enough in order to beat out other teams? Because other teams are going to prepare exactly they know exactly what schemes you're going to run.
Yeah, that's true. It really depends how well you defend Giannis. If you can't stop Giannis, exactly. You can't stop the Bucks offense.
As Giannis is at the end of the day, he feeds to all the role players. Yeah, exactly.
Even though he's not the point guard, but he's the Russell Westbrook of the Bucks, or Russell Westbrook is the Giannis of Houston.
Sure, yeah.
Just a guy who penetrates and kicks out. So the 4th and 5th seed, Heat versus Pacers. Now the Pacers don't look too good. I'm gonna be honest. The Pacers don't look too good. Oladipo does not look like himself. There's something really odd about this Oladipo injury situation that I can't quite place, but usually players, it wasn't a season-ending injury. It wasn't that bad of an injury, as in like no ligament tear. But he just doesn't look like himself athletically. And it looks really odd with the Pacers because they just need Victor Oladipo.
Exactly, yeah.
They've been able to win season games without him. But again, that's just season games, right? That's regular season games. We know the Pacers have often been just a solid regular season team, even back when they had Paul George. When it came to the playoffs, they just got beat out by stars like LeBron. So they're gonna have to figure something out. Nate McMillan's gonna have to figure something out, and they're just gonna have to find a way to beat the Heat, which I don't see them. I don't see. I don't see it.
I think the Heat can take them in about 5 games, possibly 6, if the Pacers are able to get some semblance of Oladipo out on the court.
Yeah, and I really like the Heat right now because they have guaranteed shot makers. They have Duncan Robinson, who's just going to shoot lights out all the time. Tyler Herro. They like, again, as I said before, it's going to come down to your offense and how consistent your offense is.
And they got Butler, who's like
exactly.
The Kawhi of the team.
Yeah, he doesn't shoot the 3 that well this season.
Yeah, but
25% maybe. But he's been an excellent playmaker. He's been like one of the better do everything players. Like he averaged 26 and 6, and played solid defense. Right. The heart of the team. And I think Coach Spo, I don't think he gets enough credit. I honestly think he's he should be second in Coach of the Year voting.
Coach of the Year,
in my opinion. I know some people like Taylor Jenkins, I think that's his name, from Memphis, just because Memphis are the 8th seed now. Or like Billy Donovan because OKC is doing so well. But I really think Coach Spo doesn't get enough credit for what he's done this season. Because I remember last season, in the offseason, we saw the Jimmy Butler move to the Heat, and we were like, okay, Jimmy Butler's at the Heat, but he can't be a number 1 player on championship team. And we're right, he can't. But the Heat have been looking really good because of all these other pieces that came to life on the team because of Coach Spo, right? Bam Adebayo was
Bam Adebayo out of nowhere, right?
It's so good. Yeah, so I think he doesn't get enough credit, and I think the Heat take this one. So moving on to the second round. we'd have Bucks playing the winner between Heat and Pacers, and we said Heat. So Bucks against the Heat, and I think that's the most interesting series in the second round.
Yeah. Probably say so too. I would say, yeah, the matchup that everybody's gonna be looking at is Bam versus Giannis, right? And seeing how well Bam can handle Giannis. Because if he can handle Giannis, the game's over, right? Because the Bucks really, their offense just runs through Giannis. Like last year, we were able to prove that if Giannis is shut down, like with Kawhi, after game 2, they put Kawhi on Giannis, and really from there on out, like Giannis didn't really look like the player he was throughout, like so dominant throughout the regular season.
Right.
So if they're gonna play something like that,
if he can't find a way to score the basket, if the Heat are able to eliminate the rim completely from him, he's just going to be a sitting duck in the middle of the court, and he's not going to be able to do anything, right? He can set a few picks, but that's about it. He would just be completely silent, shut down, just like we saw against Raptors, as you said. So I think that's a really interesting series. Both teams are great defensive teams, and it's really just going to come down to guarding Giannis and basically coaching. I'm really curious to see if Coach Budenholzer has anything else he can offer in the team. We know that when Giannis is off, they do play well in the regular season. They play pretty well because of bench players like George Hill, who have just shined in the season, and players like Brook Lopez stepping it up as a rim protector. Right. Like I think he's top 5 in defensive player of the year voting. So it's going to be really interesting to see the coaches battle as well. In the other second round, I lost the word for it. Series. Matchup. Yeah. Raptors versus Celtics. I think this is a little less interesting, simply because it's gonna be like they're so even. It's not like if the A or B gets accomplished, this will happen. You need to do everything to win here. There's not a single. I don't see how a single thing that you pinpoint between the two teams can determine the series. Because
it's really gonna be like swing, like a bunch of factors that are gonna swing the series. It's not gonna be like one play or like one matchup that's really gonna define the series. Right. Especially since both teams are so deep,
Yeah, exactly.
It's just gonna be like up to the role players and bench, kind of step up when they need to step up.
Yeah. Raptors have been doing so well in finding talents, undrafted talents in the league, and adding them to the roster and making them serviceable role players. And the Celtics have done really well on making their stars shine brighter. Jason Tatum, who recently, in the games before quarantine, he was a monster.
Yeah.
And Jaylen Brown has also been really good this season. Very underrated. I don't think people realize. I think he should have been an all-star. He's really good. He plays very well on both ends of the court.
He's a really good defensive
now. He can actually shoot threes now, which is really good. But the teams are just so even. Like if you look at the matchups, Kyle Lowry versus Kemba Walker, like that. Norman Powell versus Jaylen Brown. That seems a little bit lopsided, but I think Norman Powell is one of the better 3-and-D players in the league. And he's just been he can play both ways. He can hit the three. He can be a slasher. He can sort of do it all. And he plays great defense. Often guarding the number one ball handler on the other team. And then you got OG Anunoby, who's one of the best ISO defensive players in the league right now. He's been so good because he's using that 7'2" wingspan and just disrupting any offense that you're trying to generate. So the matchups are really even.
And the matchups are really even. What I will say is that for the Raptors, you really want. I think our big focus, we want to look at the Celtics defensively in terms of trying to stem the Raptors is their transition D. The Raptors, a lot of their buckets that they get are from transition plays. Whenever they are able to get a strip, whenever they're able to get a turnover, they're always running the ball. It's sort of similar to the way like Lonzo used to play, except without those long passes. But yeah, everybody's running. Like right when we see the turnover, everybody's like booking it towards the other side of the court. And those are the type of buckets that during the playoffs you're going to get less and less of. So I really want to see how the Raptors like half court offense is going to work, because really looking at the Raptors in their offensive rating, they haven't been doing too well in terms of like half court. A lot of their buckets they've been getting are like easy buckets off of like picks from the back end.
Right. Yeah. That's going to be really interesting. And the Raptors are one of those teams where everybody can run. Everybody can run. Everybody can pass the ball. You know, all their players can do a little bit of everything. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's something they're going to have to keep doing when it comes to the playoffs. When the game starts slowing down, right? They're going to have to manage that and try to generate some offense out of that. Boston, on the other hand, they just have so many weapons, man. Boston have so many weapons. When the game slows down, everybody can score. Their fourth option, Gordon Hayward, is averaging 17 points a game. That's the fourth option. And he's efficient too, very efficient. And honestly, almost back to his Utah self, like his all-star form.
I just don't think he's getting the recognition.
Yeah, if you were given more possessions, I think easy 22 points a game.
Yeah, exactly.
So now it comes down to it. Who's taking the series?
The series I think is going to be 7 games, in my opinion.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, 7 games. I think it's a reasonable. Yes, and I think really you could go one way or another. But in my opinion, I think the Raptors at the end of the day will take the series.
Yeah, that's also what I thought. I was thinking, they have the championship experience. They just went to the finals, and they've just been looking really good as a team.
Yeah, the team chemistry is really on point right now.
Yeah,
like even though they've been like I really see looking at their 2 scrimmage games that they've had, like their chemistry doesn't seem off at all, and they really do seem like they're clicking on all cylinders. And like that's something really encouraging, right? Especially before like you're going into playoffs. Like the Celtics, right? Looking at some of their games, while they've been able to produce, like there are at times the play like the play on the court seems awkward or like stilted.
Yeah, right. And I think the Raptors have another reason I think the Raptors will probably win in the 7-game series is the Celtics. Yes, they have a lot of shot makers, shot creators, guys who can get their own shot. Raptors have been one of the best teams when it comes to ball movement, like moving the ball, finding that open shot. They've just been doing that so well. But in the league, they're probably the best in the league besides maybe like Golden State and Utah. But they've adopted that ball movement. As soon as Nick Nurse came in as the coach, this is how we're going to run offense. And, he started slowly changing that from Dwayne Casey's system. And it's been really impactful because they've been struggling because they already struggle with, hitting threes when it comes to catch and shoot beforehand. And now with all the open shots they're getting, offense just comes really easy. And as I said before, when your team, everybody on the team can do a little bit of everything, right? Everybody can pass, everybody can defend. Like if you look at the roster, there are almost no weaknesses on defense, no defensive liabilities. You look down the list and everybody can play average or above defense, right? Except maybe for the exception of like Matt Thomas or like Patrick McCaw. But
Matt Thomas is the type of guy like the bench player, to come off and he's the last 2 years he's been scorching hot. Like he comes off the bench and he hits like 3 or 4 threes. Like,
he's the kind of guy who
for 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. He's the kind of guy who like you slot in at the end of the quarter, and you want to get a bucket, and you're just gonna put him in, and he's just gonna shoot. So I do think the Raptors take this, and the conference finals is going to end up being the Bucks and Raptors. For me, the Bucks take this. I don't see Raptors stopping Giannis at all this year. I think every single time we've seen them in the regular season, Giannis has just looked like he's just been a monster against the Raptors.
Yeah, I think the Raptors, like in that series, they're really gonna miss Kawhi. They're gonna be like, because regular season, everybody's saying, hey, the Raptors, their record is even better than without Kawhi. But what I will say is that when you have a player like Kawhi who can like clutch up or like take the shots, make the shots when you really need the shots to be made, that's something that like the Raptors, they don't have one specific player who's designated to be that person, But in a team dynamic where you have one like absolute killer who's like, he's gonna be making the shots at the end of the game in the fourth quarter, that's something that the Raptors kind of need. And like, sure, their team chemistry and like their ball movement is amazing, but when it comes down like under pressure, end of the quarter, especially end of the fourth quarter, if the game's close, it's gonna be really tough for the Raptors to figure out like, hey, who's gonna be making these shots.
Right. And it literally could be anybody, and that's what we have. Like, they have to find that consistency. And are they going to trust everybody to be able to be ready for that shot in the end? Right. That's just going to have to be something they deal with. They remind me of the 2014 Spurs. Just a team that doesn't really have a main guy. Even though the 2014 Spurs did use Tim Duncan most of the time, at the end of the game, they just passed it to him on the left block and he'd just go to work. And you saw it at the end of games, like especially that OKC game where he made that turnaround jumper or turnaround floater that just like rattled around the rim for like a year and a half. So yeah, I think we'll have to move on because we've taken a lot of time. So let's move on to the West. Let's do this a little quicker.
Sure.
So the play-in, Grizzlies versus Trailblazers. Who takes this?
Really, I think most likely the Grizzlies will take it. And I don't even think that's a reflection on the Trailblazers generally. I just think that in looking at the two playing, I really don't see the Grizzlies losing both straight. I really just see the Grizzlies like they may lose the first one, but they'll definitely get one out of those two.
Right, and I think the Trailblazers' defense is definitely going to be their downfall. They don't really have any star defenders at the moment. Just a bunch of like average defenders, I guess, like Trevor Ariza, because he's too old. I don't think any of them can keep up with Ja Morant. And their defense is really going to struggle, and I don't see them winning.
I mean, looking at the Trailblazers, like they're really relying just on CJ McCollum and Dame to hit the threes, and like especially like looking at the Raptors' coverage of them, which is something that the Grizzlies may try to imitate. Like all the shots they're tough shots. Like when they make those shots, it's like they're really working with those shots. It's not like the Trailblazers don't really have like a motion offense where you're getting easy buckets every half possession or every two possessions,
Right. Yeah. That's a great point.
So it's probably the Grizzlies.
Yeah. Lakers versus Grizzlies, first round. Lakers take it, I think.
Lakers take it. I think the Grizzlies can get one game, but yeah, about 4 or 5 games.
Yeah.
LeBron isn't messing around.
Yeah. Clippers versus Mavericks.
That's more of an interesting.
That's a tough one.
Mavericks, a tough one, yeah.
Mavericks in the season ran the number 1 offense in the league. While Clippers were a top 5 defensive team, and they're undefeated when everybody is healthy. But I think this might even stretch to 6 games. I think Luka's going to work some magic, and he's going to be able to unlock something in the Dallas offense that we literally haven't seen yet. And that I guess that might be a stretch, but I truly believe that Luka Doncic is gonna find a way.
I mean, Luka this season he's been playing like a top 5 player, and if you got a top 5 player, I really don't see losing in the first round. With like unless you're putting him a fight of like 6 games.
That's true.
I expect to be 6 games. Yeah, and what I will say is that in the playoffs, they're gonna be looking at Luka like he's Harden.
That's true.
Right? Because the Mavericks, unless KP can really step up, like Porzingis, he can really step up his play. The Mavericks are really just a one trick pony, which is just Luka. You know, it's sort of like Giannis on the Bucks. You know, like it's Luka's the main playmaker and the distributor, and so if you can just stop him, then like everybody else, they aren't going to get their looks and they're not going to be in rhythm. And then the Clippers can really just like kill him there or stop that momentum right there. But yeah, if Luka has his way, this can even go 7 games if Luka is just like working his magic and like they can't do anything to stop him.
Yeah, I also think it's going to come down to Dallas's defense because the Clippers have so many options, right? They added Marcus Morris, Kawhi, Paul George, Lou Williams, a great hustle guy like Montrezl Harrell on the inside, great bench pieces. And Joakim Noah, who looks okay. He looks like he can be a sort of like a rim runner, and yeah, that's going to be really interesting. But I think Dallas is definitely not going to go down without a fight. So yeah. But Clippers do take it. Nuggets versus Rockets.
Nuggets versus this is I'll say it's a more tricky series to look at. But what I will say is that the Nuggets, they're a really like in the regular season they've shown their flashes, and I think generally they've been more consistent than the Rockets. I think the Rockets trading Clint Capella, that was like a Daryl Morey move, or like a move where basically it was just like a bet on statistics. But I really think that in the playoffs, the Rockets are really going to struggle with not having somebody to defend. Well, I'm blanking on his name. Yeah, Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, Nikola Jokic. That's gonna be tough, especially with like Nikola Jokic can move now. Like he's slimmed down a bit. He can move now. He can get from one end of the court to the other, with ease. He's probably going to be able to outlast what he usually is able to. Like he usually gets gassed at the end of games. So does James Harden. But both of them have slimmed down. It's going to be a really interesting series to see how long either of them can last. Because we've often seen them in playoff series. They're at the 40th, 45th minute. They're just like, dude, I can't do this anymore. I'm not, I can't play defense anymore. I'm just gonna, focus my energy on, getting bucket.
I mean, then again, that's like looking at Harden. Like the past few seasons, like everybody's been criticizing his like playoff performance, and he's always like the excuse that Harden fans have always made is that he hasn't been rested. I mean, now this year, there's no excuses. Like you've been out for what, like 2-3 months. Like Harden's rested. He's prepared. He should be able to take them down, like theoretically, right? Based on the Rocket fan base expectations, and really, if they aren't able to make it this year, and really, I don't expect them to win the chip, but they should be making it to like the second round in terms of their own expectations, right? But the Rockets, like time is of the essence because time is now working against them. Their players are aging, like Westbrook and Harden are both aging,
and they traded all the picks.
Yeah, and they traded their future basically away for the short term. And now it's not really a good look for the Rockets, especially to be in the 6th seed and like last year having like basically been championship contenders, and this year you've dropped even lower.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah,
it's a real gamble that Daryl Morey has made on statistics alone, and it's Russ has really shown, come out and played to what we expect Russ to play at when Clint Capella's out of there. But when you can only shine when your center literally is gone, what does that say about you as a player, right? Yeah. When you can only play when a certain condition is met, that means you're pretty predictable, and you can only play a certain way. So it's really going to come down. Honestly, I think Rockets' win percentage is their 3-point percentage.
Exactly, that's literally the truth. Yeah, Rockets, like at this point, Daryl Morey's whole strategy, because Daryl Morey was at the time, he was like when preparing the roster before even the midseason trades. Like he was saying, the Rockets are a team which is like hit or miss. Like if they hit their threes, they can blow out. Like they can even blow out the Warriors. Like last year, if they connect on their shots. And the thing was that they lost because they just couldn't hit the shots. When they needed the shots, they just couldn't hit it. And like the Rockets really are just like a they're betting on their three. And so, like, I remember after they traded away Clint Capella, they won against the Lakers. They actually beat the Lakers by double digits. And the next day, they got blown out by the Suns by over 20 points. So that kind of tells you, like, the variability that they have game by game. You know, it's like it's really up to their shooters to get done.
Yeah, and Nuggets defense isn't bad either. So it's really going to be interesting. But I think Nuggets take it in maybe 6. I'd say.
I think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah. Jazz versus Thunder. Let's just make this a little quicker. I think it's a really interesting series, but just because like none of them really have like a number one star player. I guess Donovan Mitchell sort of, but still he's playing within that Jazz system. But I'm gonna take the Jazz because they have more playoff experience. I know Chris Paul has plenty of playoff experience, and he's had plenty of losing playoff experiences, and I think this is just going to be another one of them.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. Not much to say on that.
Yeah, okay. Moving on. So the next round would be Lakers versus the Jazz, I guess. Yeah, Lakers versus the Jazz. Yeah. Lakers.
Oh yeah.
5.
Not much to talk about. Yeah. 5-6 games. Yeah.
Clippers versus Nuggets. That one, you know,
that's more tough. Yeah.
Yeah, especially with Clippers, they've struggled to find a center who can consistently guard dominant bigs like AD. We saw against AD.
Yeah, Montrezl Harrell really struggled. He got really frustrated.
And JaMychal Green.
Trying to guard.
Yeah, they were both just too small. They signed Joakim Noah. I don't know how much help he's going to be. He's a former defensive player of the year, but he's like 33 years old, 34 years old. You know, nowhere near his prime. So it's going to be really interesting how they guard someone like Nikola Jokic, who can, you know, not only post up,
he can do it all.
He can do it all.
Yeah.
So you know I'm not saying that he's a better offensive player than Anthony Davis, but he can make. He can play high, the high post. He can, you know, space the floor very well. He can be the point guard, as we've seen in the scrimmage, apparently. So, you know, it's going to be really interesting, but I think Clippers take it simply because
Clippers offense is just too versatile.
I think by that time, I think Kawhi's going to hit his stride, and he's going to be the playoff Kawhi that we've always seen. And Clippers have, Nuggets have nothing to stop him. Here we are, Lakers versus Clippers.
The premier matchup, I guess.
Yeah. Who you got?
I personally have the Clippers, but I will say that this is going to be, in my opinion, a 7-game series.
I don't think it. I feel like it goes 6 for the Clippers.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to go any further than 6 because of how, you know, how dominant the Clippers are and how limited Anthony Davis is without LeBron James.
Yeah.
If you look at his, you know, I know like plus minus isn't exactly like the greatest numbers, but like he becomes average. Like their offense becomes average after the average LeBron. NBA offense when LeBron's gone. And AD, you know, sort of struggles to get his own shot because, you know, we've always seen, or we always thought of the past like half decade that, you know, AD is one of the most talented offensive players in the league, and yet he can't quite carry his own offense yet. He can't quite be that number one or like consistent shot creator down the stretch. Maybe it's the injuries, maybe it's, you know, but he just hasn't been that guy. And I know Clippers have been struggling to guard him. But I just don't have enough faith in Anthony Davis when you're, you know, down by 5 and there's 2 minutes left. Is he just going to post up and, you know, try to hit a turnaround jumper or something like that? I don't know. But obviously LeBron's probably going to be on the court for that. But to get there, how is the Lakers going to manage LeBron's minutes? Because he's 35 now. He's not getting any younger. I know he sort of gets, you know, into like Super Saiyan mode whenever he gets in the playoffs, and and his hair is literally turning white, actually.
Yeah, you can see his beard, the edge is turning white. Yeah.
But yeah, that's gonna be really interesting. I think Clippers are gonna take it.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, actually, I would say the 6-7 games, that kind of difference is not really going to matter. I would say that difference is up to kind of momentum. So it's just going to be yeah.
So finals: Clippers versus Milwaukee, Kawhi versus Giannis again. Kawhi's with, I guess, a better team than Toronto.
Yeah.
So I think Clippers take it.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say Clippers take it. But I think this is going to be a tough series. It's going to be a long series.
Yeah, and again, it's going to come down to how do you manage Giannis and Antetokounmpo, especially with the Clippers, who are even smaller than the Raptors, right? They don't have Serge Ibaka, they don't have Marc Gasol. How are they going to manage that, that kind of play? But I do think Clippers take it in like six games.
Yeah.
So
fair to say,
I guess we see Clippers at the end. Before we end, I'm gonna have I'm gonna fire off some quick questions for you, and just answer them off the top of your head. Okay. MVP.
Giannis.
Who's your MVP? Defensive Player of the Year.
Bam Adebayo.
Most Improved Player.
Brandon Ingram.
Coach of the Year.
Nick Nurse.
Rookie of the Year.
Ja Morant.
Sixth man.
I think it would be one of the Clippers. So either Montrezl Harrell or Lou Williams. Probably Montrezl Harrell, because I think that there is some like fatigue with having to say like Lou Williams win another 6-man again. I just think that Montrezl
LeBron every year.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like LeBron, if we really cared about MVP, LeBron probably should have won. Like he should have a lot more MVPs in his trophy case,
Well, okay, it's been great talking to you. For anyone listening at all, thanks for sticking with us for this long. Again, tune in every week. We've got stuff going on. We got the season's about to start with the NBA and the NHL. And then we have Champions League soccer on August 8th, starting then. So, we got a lot of sports content coming your way, thanks to sports restarting again. So tune in for those. But besides that, see you all next week.
Yeah, see you all.